What do Celeste, Hades, and Mob Psycho 100 have in common? Well, on the surface, almost nothing. But one thing these different pieces of media do exceptionally well is show masculinity in a positive way. In Celeste, we have Theo. In Hades, Zagreus. And in Mob Psycho 100, we have Mob. These men might not look like much, but their perspectives are crucial depictions in media we need right now. In psychology, toxic masculinity is the idea that there are norms and expectations for men that harm society for both men and women. Men are often socialized to be aggressive and domineering, compete, win. Even when young boys get into fights, parents will often write it off as, "Oh, boys will be boys. You're not hurt that bad, don't cry. Real men don't shed tears." These traits might sound appealing, but they can have devastating psychological consequences. Low empathy, isolation, entitlement, and sexual aggression, just to name a few. One of the ways we can combat toxic masculinity is in our portrayals in the media. Batman, for example, has been portrayed both positively and harmfully. In some of the older Batman cartoons and comics, Bruce fixates on working alone, never sharing his feelings with those close to him. But in newer iterations, like in the movie Batman vs. the Ninja Turtles, he opens up to the turtles and works together with them. He seems more happy and content in this movie than the somber, isolated Batman. Although, when it comes to the gold standard of men in media, Zagreus, Mob, and Theo are hard to beat. So today, I wanted to break down toxic and positive masculinity. Also, I want to illustrate the power of positive representation for men in media. I'm Berry. If you enjoyed this video, maybe like and share with your friends. Also, don't forget to hit that sub button and notification bell so you'll always see my latest content. I think we need to start by breaking down toxic and positive masculinity. Toxic masculinity is hard to combat in society because these expectations are pernicious. Hypercompetitiveness is not an inherently bad trait. Having a constant drive to push yourself to be better can be a form of hypercompetitiveness, or healthily competing against others. But the other side of the coin isn't looking too good. This same trait can ruin people's lives. Some people base their happiness and worth on competition. So when the circumstances aren't ideal, their mental health tanks. Suppressing emotions is another trait of toxic masculinity that can sound good in our minds. We might be able to stay strong through a trying time. Sometimes it can be helpful to hold back emotions when a stressful situation isn't resolved yet. Although the vast majority of the time, it causes reprehensible harm to the one pushing down their feelings. Don't cry, be a man. I've heard this phrase myself so many times as a child, and it's caused a lot of problems in my personal life. Toxic masculinity impacts me constantly. I have a hard time expressing how I feel because I think I should figure it out myself. Self-reliance, similar to the other two traits, has mixed messaging. It can be helpful to rely on ourselves. Although the line often gets crossed quickly, we often assume, I don't need XYZ, I can do this myself. But it's not a healthy long-term solution. Doing everything by oneself can be tremendously taxing, both mentally and physically. Most companies have multiple employees for this reason. We can only do so much on our own. Something interesting is that there are two sides to all of these traits. We can be self-reliant, hyper-competitive, and stoic in healthy or unhealthy ways. Understanding these distinctions allow us to use these expectations in more positive ways. This brings us to positive masculinity. This is the inverse of toxic masculinity. Instead of masculine traits that hold us back, these traits empower men. Men are often assumed to be strong and courageous. These expectations can be used in a positive way. If we gather strength from our bonds, this is generally a healthy behavior. For example, a loved one can give us motivation to achieve our goals. We can find strength from the support they have for us, which makes us feel confident and empowered. Compared to toxic masculinity, let's say hypothetically, a parent says annihilate and destroy the enemy soccer team. When a player on the enemy team gets hurt, with this priming, we might not empathize with their pain. Stopping the suppressions of emotions is also another way to use masculinity positively. Real men cry. It's not weakness to show vulnerability. It takes so much strength to let our emotions out. We need to understand this because these emotions don't disappear. Pushing down our feelings deep into our gut, like Hank says from King of the Hill, can lead to heinous outcomes. Although sharing these feelings is a courageous and masculine thing to do, not to mention how much closer it makes us with those around us. It's hard to connect with people who don't tell us about how they feel. Positive masculinity helps to alleviate a lot of these issues, especially in regards to the treatment of women. Entitlement and sexual aggression cause so much harm to men and women in society. Men who are entitled and aggressive can have a hard time keeping partners. Women, on the other hand, face the consequences of these behaviors. They are constantly objectified in workplace settings and society at large. Women face inordinate amounts of discrimination, sexual assault, and harassment. A lot of these issues spawn from toxic masculinity. Portraying more positive elements can help combat this entitlement and aggression. Media that portray men and women in respectful, healthy relationships means a lot. Having similar power dynamics and emotional interactions can definitely help. When we see characters we relate to treat women with respect, it makes us want to as well. One last area where positive masculinity can help is valuing interdependence. Interdependence doesn't mean a lack of independence. We can still rely on ourselves while also being not afraid to ask others for help when it's necessary. Hypothetically, let's say something is bugging us that we can't solve on our own. Instead of pushing down this feeling, we can share with a loved one. The person might have some insight that helps us. Although if we never bothered to open up, this issue might still be here today. Positive masculinity is so inspiring for this reason. By opening up and working with one another, we can all be happier in the long run. Now that we've gone over the positive and negative elements of masculinity, let's start with Celeste. In this game, we play as Madeline. She scales a mountain, which can be thought of as an allegory for mental health. Climbing this beast is harder than it seems. She meets Theo along her journey. He is very open and honest about his feelings. Theo knows how to step back and let Madeline take center stage. Not only this, but he uses his strength and confidence to uplift our hero and never tear her down. When we look at some of the traits associated with toxic masculinity, Theo stands in contrast to many of them. He isn't aggressive, and he has mountains of empathy. Madeline would have never been able to climb the mountain without Theo. However, the same is also true for him. Without opening up to Madeline and bonding with her, she would have no incentive to help him out of the Mirror Temple. Both Madeline and Theo are uplifted to new heights because of the bond they share. His empathy is also inspiring. He used his relationship with his grandpa to help Madeline. He teaches her to focus on a feather to help her anxiety. Using a bond he had with his grandfather, he imparts strength onto his friend. Although if he had been socialized in a toxic manner, things might look different. Theo might still be in the Mirror Temple if he isolated himself. Or if he came off as too sexually aggressive, he might scare Madeline off before he got to know her. Luckily, Theo is a positive representation of masculinity. His strength comes from his relationship. He's courageous enough to share his insecurities with a close friend. Theo is a shining example of how to write a man in media. Seeing interactions like these let men know it's okay to be open and honest with our feelings. We can reach out to those around us and still be strong. Then comes our next example of positive masculinity, Hades. In this game, we play as Zagreus, son of Hades. We try to escape Tartarus while piecing together more information about who we are. Zagreus is similar to Theo, in that he's a very sensitive and thoughtful dude who cares deeply for his friends. He will often ask his enemies how they are doing or if they are upset, not to mention the lengths he goes to send messages between two long-lost lovers. Orpheus and Eurydice rekindle their love thanks to his contributions. Or how about his relationship with his father? Zagreus doesn't seem spiteful or vindictive towards his dad, only upset at his foul treatment. He even comes around to understand Hades. Persephone also helps our hero along the way. She helps him realize more about his past and who he is. The love he has for his mother also gives him strength to keep going on. He will struggle and push himself to see her one more time. Zagreus shows a vast range of emotions throughout the narrative. He isn't afraid to choke up when he talks to his mother.
It cannot just keep hiding from its problems, running from them. We're stuck with one another.
Or feel sad that he must live in Tartarus. These elements help with positive masculine representation, but also his character in general. Part of the reason why his character rose to popularity is that he was given a vast range of emotions and a relatable plight. Without his friends and family, he couldn't figure out who he is. This experience can feel similar to many of our lives. Positively interacting with others can uplift everyone. Hades and Persephone bond again because their son invests so much time and energy into reforging their relationship. At the end of the narrative, he has friends and a family who care about his well-being. Without Nyx's mirror or Skelly's charm, we probably couldn't finish the game. Zagreus didn't get help by isolating himself. He gathered strength and courage from those he cared about. A character like Zagreus shows us the strength that men can get from making bonds with one another. Last but not least is Mob Psycho. As a short tangent, Mob Psycho 100 is a masterclass anime, filled with so much depth and heart. I highly recommend you check out all these pieces of media, but especially this one. This anime subverts expectations a lot. The main character has no struggles in terms of abilities. He far outclasses the majority of his enemies, but Mob's plight isn't about power. It's about quality relationships and how they give our lives meaning. Mob's character is the perfect dissection of toxic and positive masculinity. He suppresses his emotions to the point where he explodes. Once he gets to 100%, he reaches godlike power. Although he loses control of his life, he lashes out at friends as well as enemies, showing no mercy. If we think about this in terms of toxic masculinity, it seems pretty one-to-one. He drowns his emotions until he can't contain them anymore and implodes. This can apply to a real-world context as well. Someone who hyper-competes at work might harm their relationship with others, not spending enough time with loved ones or focusing on work instead of their quality of life. Mob's character is close to perfection in this way, because we can see how his relationships change these negative qualities. Raijin teaches him the power of redemption, learning that people can change bad behaviors. The Body Improvement Club teaches him the power of self-control and hard work. Even minor characters like Emmy teach him the difference between superficial and meaningful bonds. He values the people in his life because he realizes they make him a better person. Mob at the end of the story is stronger in every way than when he first started. He has a better understanding of how to control his feelings and powers, a close circle of friends who uplift him. It's important to note, without these things, Mob can be a horrible person at times, causing huge amounts of damage without considering the consequences. The relationships he had saved him from himself. If he isolated himself, the Claw might have another tool of mass destruction. Mob, to me, is the ultra gold standard of positive masculinity. We can see his character change in real time as he gets rid of the more toxic elements of himself. Thanks for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. I think there is so much educational value in the media we consume. Understanding the positive and negative elements of masculinity can help us empower men to be stronger in a healthier way, creating meaningful relationships with women, instead of ones focused on entitlement, and more meaningful connections with our friends who are men. Mob, Zagreus, and Theo show us how awesome life can be when we are open with those we care about, crying around those that we love, or expressing our fears and dreams. These things don't make us weak. They make us strong in such a powerful way. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts or experiences with positive or toxic masculinity. Which characters do you think show masculinity in an uplifting way? I'd love to hear from you.